Greetings from Cybertron. This is SoundJack here with Alyssa to talk about the wrap up for TFCon DC 2017. So,
Woo! Yeah!
so this past weekend, if you weren't aware, we were at TFCon DC in Reston, Virginia this past weekend, which was, if you're watching this very far in the future, which was Saturday, which ran from September 30th to October 1st. Well, actually, the 29th. It started on the 29th, but we only went the Saturday and Sunday, so the September 30th and October 1st. And now we are going to talk about our thoughts and experiences from the convention itself. So let's start off with some general comments. So Alyssa, what are like some general comments you have about from this convention? This was both our first convention, first Transformers convention, I should say. And what did you think of it?
So, as I explained in the previous video, I am not a Transformers fan in the same way that Michael is. So for me, the convention was more like the things I was interested in was more from a general perspective rather than anything specific to Transformers. And I thought it was good. I think there I was hoping for more general things to pique my interest, but that wasn't really the case. There was a lot more Transformers specificity and everything, but I think even as someone who didn't really know much about Transformers, I still found things to enjoy and things to things that were interesting. I found those things that were interesting. So, and I think that's the most important thing for me.
Nice. For me, I was extensively excited about this convention. I could barely sleep the night before this started. I only got like 3.5 hours of sleep because I woke up in the middle of the night and I was just too excited and I couldn't go back to sleep. It was like Christmas. Like when you get really excited for Christmas and then you're just so excited you can't fall asleep, but you know you gotta wait because your parents aren't going to be up yet. But overall, I loved being at TFCon this year. It was great to meet so many famous people within the Transformers community. I didn't end up making a whole lot of Transformer friends from the fandom. Just because I was too focused on everything else that was going on, and also I'm an awkward duck. I'm a very much an awkward duck.
I can confirm he is very much an awkward duck.
But I made a lot of fun and amazing purchases. I had a lot of great fun. I'm glad Alyssa was able to come with me, so as I can enjoy it with someone at the very least, and especially glad it was her.
Oh, thank you.
But I will get into more specifics as we move along in this discussion. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to specifically talk about the panels that we attended and what we thought of them. So Saturday, well, let's actually start with us getting in there. We got there a little before 9 and we got into we registered. We went to the registration desk and then we saw the massive line to get into the dealer room, and I think we both thought that like it was going to take a while once the convention actually opened for us to actually get in the dealer room, right?
Yeah, the convention basically was in a hotel, and the upper floor of the mezzanine had there was like a balcony that overlooked like the main hall, and the line for the dealer's room wrapped all the way around there. But I think the line went pretty quickly once the dealer's room opened. I've definitely seen worse lines for the dealer's room. Anime next. Cough cough.
Yeah.
The cough cough part doesn't really work well when you forget the name of the convention you're trying to allude to.
Good. Yeah.
But it will move pretty quickly, especially since we bought our tickets before the convention and we had wristbands, so they were able to let us in pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The dealer's room was in a big ballroom area, and it was pretty large. Definitely, I would say that the actual room itself was probably smaller than many dealer rooms I've been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been in, like, I know one of the smaller conventions I've been to, like Garden State Comic Fest is probably the convention that I've been to that was about the same size. That convention was in a sports arena, specifically for like hockey and ice skating. So they used rinks for the dealer's room. So like they basically had all the ice was melted off the rinks, and then all the stuff was set up there. And that was a lot. There was a lot of room in that convention space because the ring is large. In this convention center, they had a lot of dealers there, but it was very packed. It was packed into a small space. So I think it was very crowded there. But I think there was enough like stuff there that like the fact that there wasn't like a huge room was fine for what it was.
Yeah, on the forums on TFW 2005, so I saw some people in the Maryland local chat commenting that this dealer room was smaller than other years, and actually, if you watched my previous video, our previous words, where are they? The previous video talking about TFCon, the TFCon pre-show talk, I mentioned that there was one in Canada and one in Chicago and DC. I was a bit wrong in that. Apparently there's only one convention in the US per year, and it just goes all over the place. And this year happened to be in DC, and it happened to be local for us.
Yep.
Well, relatively local for her. For Alyssa.
Yes, as I said in my previous video, I live in New Jersey, so it was still a distance to come to TFCon for me.
Yes, but so I was a little wrong on that. And this was definitely the first time that they used this particular venue at the very least. I'm not sure if they've been to DC before, but I don't think they have. But they did know, people online did note that this was a bit of a smaller dealer room than other years. So there is also that to consider.
Yep.
But it was plenty enough for me. I made plenty of purchases, but that will come after we finish talking about the panels.
Yes.
So then the first panel we went to was a Q&A with Transformers writer James Roberts. Alyssa, from a non-major Transformer fan perspective, what did you think of that panel?
So I really liked that panel. I thought James Roberts seemed like a really cool dude in general. He seemed very approachable. He seemed to have a lot of ideas about things, and he definitely spoke from a writer's perspective. And as someone who is into writing and reading and stuff like that, I think that the way he talks about narrative and story is really cool. And I could appreciate what he was talking about, even if I didn't know the exact characters or scenarios he was talking about. Obviously, writing comics is different from writing like a book or something, but he definitely approached things from, what works from a story perspective, and I like that a lot. And I also think that he's also very British, which, doesn't really impact his likability, but still interesting. And I just enjoyed hearing him talk about, his process of working through the comic and how he writes it and how he approaches storylines and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was personally excited to meet him and be able to ask a couple of questions out of him. There were quite a few good questions from the panel, but most of them were very specific to the stories he was writing. So if you haven't read the comics, a lot of the questions wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to you. I know I did explain a couple of the reasons why some of the answers happened to Alyssa.
Yeah, but for the most part, any specific questions were like lost on me. They like went right over my head, and I didn't actually like understand, who this character was or why they did a certain thing or why it was important for them to ask that question and stuff like that. I think what's also really interesting is that it seems like James Roberts is very interested in exploring like the fact that Transformers or the Transformers universe is a completely homonormative society, as opposed to like our society where there's an even male female gender split. For Cybertronians, it's like all males for the most part, except for like a couple handful of females. So exploring the ramifications of that and what that would mean for society at large, I think were really cool and interesting questions that he's exploring in his comics. And it's really nice to see him like wanting to flesh that out and investigate those things as opposed to just hand waving it or, trying to force like heteronormativity into a society that doesn't necessarily have it.
Yeah, those kinds of questions were especially important in this discussion. There were a lot of people asking that. I remember someone was asking, the specific way they phrased it was, why must the gays suffer?
Yeah, they were talking.
And he noted,
yeah,
and he had noted that the main reason was because in like any drama story, the couples tend to suffer, and especially a long running open format type of story, a lot of the couples will suffer. And since currently all of the couples are all homosexual couples, they're the ones that are suffering.
Yeah. But I'm glad that suffering is more a product of the just amount of male characters there are in the show rather than it being like a queer bait kind of scenario where like, the studio executives or the directors of whatever show or movie are like sort of making that relationship or only teasing it, as opposed to it being a organic thing, if that makes sense.
Yes. I did get to ask, like I said, I did get to ask him a couple of questions. I did record it, and it will be going up in our vlog, and the questions I asked and his full answers will be going up in the vlog that will hopefully be posted this coming Sunday, which should be Sunday the 8th, October 8th, correct, Alyssa?
Say that again? I'm sorry, I got distracted.
You're good. The vlog video I want to post will be coming out this coming Sunday, but that's the 8th, correct?
Yes. Let me check my calendar. Correct, it is the 8th.
All right, cool. So we'll see the question there, but I gotta say that was probably my favorite moment at the convention, because I asked my question and the audience all kind of like remember like, ooh, that was a good question and then James himself was like, oh, this man wants canon.
Yeah, I won't say anything about the question he asked specifically. That will be something you'll have to see and check out on your own time, because I'm like that. But I think your question was very good, and I think a lot of people appreciated that question.
Yeah. I was walking back to my seat, and one person in line like stopped me and said, I like you because of that question.
Well, that's great. That's good.
Yeah.
A lot of people, yes, I agree, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. But moving on, that was at 11 a.m. on Saturday, and then immediately after at 12. Oh, wait, we skipped that. We went to lunch. We skipped the design panel with Aaron Archer.
Yes.
That would have been interesting, but that wasn't too particularly interesting to me just because I'm not a designer of toys.
Right.
Like, it certainly would have been cool, but we also needed lunch.
Yeah, yes. I think one of the problems, I mean, it's not a problem, but because all the panels that Michael wanted to see were right at the time, or sometimes were right at times where we would normally get stuff, or like lunch or dinner, it was important that we forego some panels in order for us to actually like get food in our bodies. So, and I think we mostly used that time to peruse the dealer's room more anyway, so it worked out.
Yes. So I bought even more things.
Yes.
But the next panel I went to at 1 was the Beast Wars Q&A with David K. I did not end up asking him any questions because I wasn't sure like the kind of questions to ask. But it was quite fun to see what the other people were asking him. A lot of it was focused on more so specifically him rather than Beast Wars itself.
Yes.
Because while like Megatron was one of his most notable roles, because he did Optimus Prime in Transformers Animated. But there was still quite a variety to the kinds of questions he got. Alyssa, you want to add comments to this?
Yeah. I think that David K was probably the voice actor who seemed the most seasoned when it came to... And we'll probably touch more on this when we get to the other voice actors and panels that we saw, but David K definitely has more of a... I thought he had more of like a panel presence, I guess. Like, it seemed like he's very used to like answering questions from fans and like talking about his experiences. And a lot of times people ask him more about his craft and how he was a voice act, like how he does stuff with voice acting, as opposed to just about like Beast Wars and Megatron and like the process of going into that. And I guess it's mostly because it's hard to fill an hour-long panel with just questions about just one show, especially since he's done so much outside of that one cartoon, and even outside of just animated Transformers.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he got a question regarding working with the John Oliver show.
Yes, he did.
Last week tonight.
And for those of you who don't know, David K is the voice of the announcer for Last Week Tonight, which is a comedy show on HBO starring British comedian John Oliver. Which, by the way, I will give a quick shout out to. I really like that show. If you're really into like news coverage and learning stuff, John Oliver's programming is really great. You learn a lot of cool stuff about things, for anything from like multi-level marketing to coal to recent events to fashion, and a lot of the subjects he goes into are more like broad political stuff, but I think he does it in a really fun and balanced way. So I know it's like not related to anything we're talking about right now, but you know, if you haven't seen Last Week Tonight, I would highly recommend you check it out if you're into like current events and like concerning topics and stuff like that.
Yeah, it also won a couple of Emmys recently, and David K was there with the crew at the Emmys when they got that, so that was cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on. So that was the Beast Wars panel at 1, and then we go at 2. We got a Generation 1 Q&A panel with Jack Angel and Neil Ross. If you don't know, Neil Ross is probably most famous in Transformers for playing the role of Springer and the Dinobot Slag, and Jack Angel has done a bunch, including Ultra Magnus, Cyclonus, Omega Supreme, Astro Train, Ramjet, and 2 others. And I know Neil Ross did others, but I can't remember them off the top of my head.
A lot of the roles that they did were bit roles in those shows too, so most of them probably weren't named or only showed up once or twice.
Well, no, they all showed up once or twice. They didn't do anything like a random human that appeared like one time. All of the characters I'm pretty sure all of the characters they voiced were characters that did receive toys, so they were like, they did stuff.
Gotcha.
So, and they definitely got names. That much I remember. But I just don't remember exactly which characters they were. That was more of an interesting panel since there were 2 people to bounce questions off of, and they had kind of similar but different experiences. They are both substantially older voice actors.
Yes.
Jack Angel especially being very advanced in age, and both of them, unlike more modern day voice actors, they came from a radio background first.
Yes.
So their experiences with doing voiceover stuff was substantially different than what David K had, even though he did have some radio work in his background.
Yeah. I think it was really interesting hearing their perspective, especially as like older people who have been doing voice acting for a very, very long time. and are probably not active as much anymore. I don't know if they've done any recent work or how recent their last work was, but they had a lot of really interesting things to say. I think what's really funny about them is that you can definitely tell that Neil Ross and Jack Angel especially aren't used to doing panels like this. And, like, they confess that, like, they don't really know much about Transformers in the same way a Transformers fan might know about the characters. They did the performances of the characters, but they don't know them in the same way that, like, you might know them, Michael.
Well, I think more so what they were saying was when they were recording, they didn't know them as well. I think at this point, and they've had made some panel appearances, they're probably not as familiar, but they know the scenarios well enough to, like, get what people are asking.
Yeah, yes. But I think it's...
Especially, both of them are very familiar with their most famous characters' catchphrases.
Yes.
Neil Ross admitting about how now his, like, favorite line he ever voiced of a character from Transformers is Springer's "I've got better things to do tonight than die." And Jack Angel a few times quoting Ultra Magnus's notable "I can't deal with that now," or paraphrase it, even though he wasn't the one who actually said it, because he didn't voice him in the movie, because the movie had a lot of principal star characters, and that was voiced by Robert Stack.
Yes.
And it was also interesting about him talking about, like, how he ended up being the one to voice Ultra Magnus after the movies. Mm-hmm. Since he just ended up being the one that sounded most like Robert Stack.
Yeah. And they also give a lot of really good advice about, becoming a voice actor and what it takes and what voiceover stuff is, and, like, talking about their experiences, which I thought was really interesting. I think they had a lot of really good wisdom for people looking for it.
Yeah. The one thing I noticed of interest, though, was Neil Ross commented that he was surprised he had the role of Springer for the movie itself.
Yes. Yeah.
And he commented he thought he had that role because he voiced Springer a few times before the movie. However, I know the original cartoon, well, not backwards and forwards, but well enough certainly to know that Springer never made an appearance before the 86 movie. So I'm very confused by his comments. I guess he was talking about another character, mm-hmm. but I'm not positive which one he was talking about.
Yeah, and I don't really blame him. It's been a while. He's voiced a ton of characters, especially for Transformers. So he's voiced probably about at least 6 characters for that one series. So it's possible that he's confusing his own appearances and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's completely understandable to make that mistake. That's just interest. That was just an interesting comment.
It is very interesting.
And I felt like I wanted to note that because of, again, he said that, but it's like not accurate to what we know.
Okay. Also,
but it is still.
I just wanted to quickly just apologize because I'm realizing that I probably sound really, like, tired. So I'm gonna try and, like, make sure my voice is a little more lively, but my apologies to people who might be like, wow, she sounds really bored. I'm not bored, I'm just tired, I promise.
Oh yeah, I started crashing today after this weekend of the convention stuff.
The convention tiredness is starting to hit me, and it's just, like, smacking me in the face, and man. So yeah, apologies if my voice sounds, like, really, like, slow and disinterested or whatever. I'm just, like, tired. That's all. Sorry. Continue. I interrupted you. Continue.
It's all good.
What you were saying.
It's all good. I wanna share one story from this specific panel, mm-hmm. because I found it very funny because they got a couple of questions about working with some of the star cast, and they noted they rarely worked with most of the star cast. Mm-hmm. Purely because of their interactions with the characters, how the characters interacted with them, which Neil Ross's and Jack Angel's just didn't. But they did hear stories, but they knew stories from Orson Welles. And actually, Jack Angel had a funny story of, like, I guess he knew the guy who originally, like, who was the owner of the Wolfgang Puck Express before it was actually the Wolfgang Puck.
Yeah.
And the owner, and he was the owner, and he was running the store. And then Orson Welles was in the store, and then he was like, "Oh, I want to go say hi and shake his hand or something." And then Orson was leaving, and then the guy ran from behind the counter before he left, grabbed his hand and shook it and said, "Mr. Welles, it's such an honor to meet you." And then, not knowing what else to say, he said, "I found the flaw of Citizen Kane." To which the entire audience was like, "Oh crap! What did Orson Welles respond?"
He basically was
and
like,
then he mentioned,
like.
Hold on.
Sorry.
If you don't.
Sorry.
And then it's all good. And then the guy explained, like, well, the nurse said that, like, the character's last words were Rosebud, but she had left the room right beforehand. And then Orson Welles said to him, and I quote from Jack Angel, "Do not tell anyone else what you have told me."
Yeah, apparently Orson Welles was like, because Citizen Kane is Orson Welles' masterpiece. Like, even he thought that. So to have someone criticize his own work is pretty, pretty ballsy, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But I think that's really interesting because I've actually watched movie videos like CinemaSins, for example, who have pointed that same mistake out. So,
yeah. I mean, it was also the time before the internet, so it's possible that mistakes such as that were not as widely acknowledged or caught.
Yeah, fair.
By the general populace, since like you couldn't share across the internet and everyone would realize, oh wait, this is wrong. So that might be more of a thing for the specific time, since he did happen to die right after he finished recording the Transformers movie. But anyway, let's move on. After that, there was a third-party product preview panel.
That's a lot of P's.
A lot of P's.
Jinx!
Yeah.
Gotta get me some water now. You're contractually obligated.
Oh, I can't because I'm talking to you through Skype.
You have to make it materialize in front of me. I'm counting on you.
Okay. If I was a wizard, I would. But anyway, we didn't go to that because I don't care too much about third-party stuff.
Yeah, and I think you talked at length about that in the last video. Yeah.
Yeah. But then right at 4, we were going to the costume contest. And before that, we ran into Don Ferguson, a.k.a. Headmaster Don, who I had contacted through Twitter because he was selling a couple of things and I wanted to get something from him. We ran into him, and then he was going up to his hotel room anyway, so we followed him up, and then we were talking because he went to the third-party panel, and he sounded a little disappointed with what they had to announce, and the main thing he commented on, there was another third-party company doing another group of Combaticons, because combiners are the favorite thing of third parties, and that's all I got from that panel.
Yeah, it seems like most people... I mean, I don't know. I guess you can look on Twitter. I know, Michael, you were looking on Twitter. Was there any consensus in Twitter or any other forums about the third-party panel?
I didn't particularly look too hard, but there were some people that were excited by some things, but I think also a lot of it had already been revealed through the Canadian TFCon.
Okay, so there was probably not as much news this time as there was in previous conventions.
Precisely. Okay. But then I went up to his room, we were talking a little bit, and then we came back down to the costume contest, and there were some really good costumes there.
I think out of all the panels that I went to, the costume contest was one of my favorites. Just because I think the kind of skill and creativity that needs to go into any Transformers cosplay is unique to it. Like, they split up the contest between human costumes and rig costumes, which I think was very fair and made a lot of sense, especially since there's different kinds of creativity and different ways to approach a costume if you're going to humanize the characters or if you're going to try and replicate their rigs. I think I have a picture, actually, on my phone, and maybe we can put it in the video, or Michael can put it on his Twitter or something, and we can show you a picture of what all the finalists looked like. Maybe. I won't make any promises. That might not happen, and I'm sorry if I make this promise and it doesn't come to fruition, but there were some really impressive cosplays. I think I think two of the human ones were these sort of like Daft Punk looking people with like And by Daft Punk, I mean they had robot heads, like their heads of the robots that they were representing, which was Soundwave and Shockwave.
Shockwave.
Of the two waves, and they had suits with the colors of the robots, so they were very formal, and they had that head going on. I think they also had the weapons.
They were referred to as formal Soundwave and formal Shockwave.
And then there was also a human Ratchet, which I thought was also really good. She won second place. And then the rigs, if I'm trying to remember, there was the three rig cosplays.
There was Bob the Insecticon.
Who I thought was really cute. I didn't know the character, but he was very cute, and his costume was very well made. And then there was also a movie Ironhide, correct? That one was super impressive. It was very tall rig, very detailed. I think he had like glowing optics too. Very, very impressive.
Yes, and his cannons were glowing
super
even.
Impressive. And then the winner was actually a Starscream, which was also Prime Starscream. I'm sorry about that. I forget that characters have different incarnations, but that one was also very impressive. I think both of us were kind of confused why Ironhide didn't make the cut because, like I said, his costume was super, 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 super detailed. But we both sort of agreed that it was probably because the Ironhide costume was bulkier, therefore it restricted mobility, which I think is something that's rated pretty high in costume contest. Like, if you're gonna make a costume, you want the costume ideally to be movable and wearable and comfortable, and the Ironhide costume seemed to, he was hulking around. It didn't really have as much like mobility as Starscream did. Starscream's costume was more compact, and the character could easily move more and do more things.
Yes, and then that was all the main things from the costume panel. And then after that was the live script auditions and reading.
Yes, and that was something you were really excited about.
Yes, because I wanted to audition. And I did audition. You were allowed to audition for 2 characters. And I auditioned to voice G1 Roadbuster and Beast Wars Tarantulas. But everyone pretty much agreed that the first person who did Beast Wars Tarantulas was like amazing. But
he was incredible.
But that actually ended up being a tie in terms of the judges, who were David Kay, Jack Angel, and Neil Ross. Between 2 of them, but I'm pretty sure that first guy still won. Yeah,
he did.
And then he was also called back for Broadside, but then he willingly gave up his part to the other person, since the other person since he already got a part.
Yes. And I think pretty much all the voices were casted pretty well. I mean, granted, I haven't seen most of the original voices, so I don't know if they were going for like uniqueness or resemblance to the original character.
The thing, though, was G1 Roadbuster never had a cartoon voice, so he was a wild card. Broadside, I can't even tell you what his voice sounded like.
Okay.
Tarantulas was spot on, and I'm pretty sure Black Arachnius was pretty spot on as well. Air Razors, I'm not sure was spot on, but was very good.
Yes.
And Tigertron's also not spot on, but pretty okay.
Yeah, I think Tigertron probably had the weaker voice, but I mean,
not a lot of people attempted to audition for Tigertron.
Yes,
as much as the other parts. But the script reading was quite fun. I'm not sure if I'm going to post the whole thing or bits and pieces. I may post the whole thing, and it may just be a separate video. I'm not sure at this point, but it was quite interesting what they did, and the best part was it was basically a story told from Springer's perspective, talking to the G1 Dinobot Slag that he had also voiced. And the last line he said, he was going to say it, and then he said, "Come on, everyone, say it with me. I've got better things to do tonight than die."
That was pretty funny.
It was. There are so many good jokes and quirks, and even Alyssa was picking on some of them. Mostly she recognized how often and how corny Megatron's yes was.
Yes. Especially since I saw a couple clips from, like, before they introduced usually the voice actors for their respective panels, they would have a brief intro, specifically of clips of, like, iconic, like, voices and characters that they did. And one of the clips of Megatron had, for David Kay, had Megatron going, like, yes. So I picked up that was, like, an inside joke.
Yeah. And then after the script reading audition, was a screening of the original 86 Transformers movie.
Yes.
Which Alyssa never saw before.
This was my first time seeing that movie, and let me tell you, it was as corny as I expected it would be. Like, that, there's just so much cheese in that movie. Like you would think that, like, three-layer cheese pizza would be the cheesiest thing you've ever seen in your life. No, the Transformers movie is one of the cheesiest things you've ever. It's cheesier than 3 cheese pizza, cheesier than 5 cheese pizza. Like, we're talking maximum cheese here, like,
including cheesy crust.
Oh yes, including cheesy crust, the cheesiest thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cheesy. But I on the whole, I liked it. I think it was a fun movie. Definitely not a good movie. Not a good quality movie. If you're looking for, like, a good movie that has, like, quality, don't watch Transformers the movie. I know I'm probably going to, like, not offend someone, but, like, upset someone by saying that, but come on, guys. It's, like, not a good movie.
I mean, I admit I love the movie, but do recognize that overall it is a terrible movie. It's just... I wasn't even born yet, and that film has so much nostalgia for me.
Yep.
Because it's so important to the Transformers mythos. And every other line of dialogue is basically something quotable or quoted at least once somewhere else.
Yep. I have to say, I think I can definitely see, especially with the death of Optimus Prime, I can definitely see why so many kids who watched the movie for the first time were probably torn up about it, or, had a connection to it. I can definitely see how that would scar you. I, of course, didn't see it when I was a kid. This is the first time I ever watching it, and it was corny. I know someone, so when we were watching it, there was a girl who was next to me who was definitely geeking out all over it and was, like, screaming about how this was the best movie she's ever seen in her life. I don't know if I'd go that far, but, like, it was a fun time.
I mean, she seemed to be, like, a big Transformers fan, but never actually had the opportunity to see the 86 movie before.
Yeah, I got that vibe too.
Yeah. But yeah, she was hyped. It was very, very much a different experience from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where a lot of people are, like, making up jokes to go along with the film.
Much different.
But in this instance, more people were singing along and quoting along to the film together in unity, and that to me just made, like, the emotions and impact of a lot of the scenes stronger. So I think for Alyssa watching it for the first time, I think this was a better instance of seeing it rather than just us, like, sitting in an apartment and then just watching it.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good point. I didn't really think. So I didn't think much of the movie. I think it probably would have seemed even more corny and, like, not as emotional had I not been in a room of people who this movie is for, like, outside of that space. This movie is just, I don't think I would be able to find much reason for me to actually, like, watch this movie outside of a Transformers fan space. So.
Yeah. And then that was it for the Saturday. And then we moved on to the Sunday, and there were a couple earlier panels, but we didn't do any of them until we got to the 12 p.m. IDW Comic Creators panel with James Roberts. And then it turned out Josh Burcham and Alex Milne joined James on the panel.
Yep.
Unfortunately for Josh, most of the questions were directed towards the More Than Meets the Eye Lost Light stuff.
Yep.
So I do kind of feel bad for him because I feel like he kind of got left out some of the time because of how the questions were. There were certainly questions more general that were answered, but in at times it certainly felt more like the Q&A panel with James Roberts Part 2.
Yeah, I felt the same too. I don't really think we gained all that much. Or at least I didn't gain that much different from watching that panel than I did with just the one with James Roberts. I guess it was still cool to watch like them talk about, like, for James Burkham and Alex Milne to talk about the art aspect of the process, but it wasn't like something that couldn't have been discussed in, like, most of the questions could have been discussed in the James Robert panel, like, with him alone, as opposed to like a full thing. So
yeah, there wasn't a whole lot too notable from that panel, so we're just going to move along to the Voice Acting 101 with Jack Angel, Neil Ross, and David Kaye.
Yep. So this was the panel that they basically devoted to just talking about general voice acting stuff as opposed to anything specifically Transformers. And I think this was really helpful for people who really wanted to know more about, like, voice acting and, like, you know, even just acting in general, you know, that world, what it's like to do that, how do you get started, what's the biggest tips and tricks of the trade, and, you know, especially since they, like, these are some older people, so they definitely have more experience. I think that Neil Ross and Jack Angel were helpful for talking about, like, as someone with, like, people with wide breadth of experience and who have worked in different decades, like, what they've learned in how they did things. And then David Kaye was really helpful from a more modern perspective as someone who did things the more, like, traditional route and talking about, and someone who's still currently doing voice acting work.
Yeah. Jack Angel is also really good because he does have dyslexia.
Yes, that was one thing we learned.
And there were a couple of questions directed towards him about how to deal with that, especially since he was a radio announcer and you would have to read just a page in front of you and not make mistakes. But since he was dyslexic, he would obviously make mistakes.
Yep.
So he just found cheats and cuts around that to just, like, cover up any errors he made because of that. But he never let his disability, granted, when he was born and he was in school, they didn't recognize that was a thing.
Yes.
That dyslexia was a thing. They just thought he was not. I'm trying to figure out how to say it the nicest way.
He wasn't. They figured that he was slow, I guess is the best way to put it, or that he wasn't at the same reading level as the other people, and was probably lumped more with people who had, like, learning disabilities rather than, like, I mean, I guess dyslexia is a learning disability to some degree, but he was lumped in with a lot of other people who weren't as normal of readers and stuff like that.
Yeah, but again, even despite that, he didn't let that stop him from doing the radio gig.
Yeah, definitely not. So I think he's a very good role model and a good source of inspiration, since he was able to do all of this cool voice acting stuff, even though he had this disability that is a big hindrance because, like, most of voice acting requires reading. So. Yeah.
Yeah, he even admitted, like, there were he did have a number of, like, flubs in the script reading, and he admitted every single one of them was a genuine flub.
Yep.
But he did play it off very well.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. But after that, there wasn't a whole lot left. The dealer room was only open for another hour. And then we kind of left like 30-40 minutes after, like a half hour before the convention the dealer room was done pretty much. And that was our trip at TFCon.
Yes.
So let's talk about purchases. Alyssa, what did you get at the convention?
I got nothing.
Yay!
That wasn't, so I want to clarify, that wasn't like a conscious choice of mine. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Like, I went to the convention with the intent of purchasing something if I thought it was interesting, but most things didn't really catch my eye or warrant or were things that I really wanted to purchase. There's only one thing that I was interested in the entire convention, and that was a 25th anniversary die cast metal Voltron figure. I'm really into Voltron Legendary Defender, and I was genuinely considering purchasing it. It was like only $100, which I thought was a pretty good deal considering it was still functional. And I mean, they were also selling the more modern Voltron figures for the reboot on Netflix, but those figures are so large, and I think the combined Voltron is 16 inches, which I don't have any space for, so I wasn't intending on buying one of those. And I was looking for, if I was going to buy a Voltron figure, I was going to buy one that was smaller, and this one was a good size, but I ended up not getting it, mostly because someone beat me to it and got it. Because I left it, I didn't want to. I didn't want to buy it unless someone didn't take it. Someone didn't take it, so.
Yeah. As for me, I bought a lot.
Yes, you bought quite a bit.
I'm not going over everything I purchased because hopefully this Friday, what's this Friday going to be? The 6th? Yes. Yeah, Friday the 6th of October. Hopefully this video will be out Wednesday the 4th. So this Friday, I will have a video looking over every specific thing I purchased. All the specific toys, all the specific other things, whatnot. Notably, I bought signatures from Jack Angel and Neil Ross. I didn't get David K's signature because his was the most expensive, and I figured I'd have a chance of getting his signature at another point in time. But I got James Roberts' signature, and I didn't need to buy anything from him, but he was selling scripts of some of his comics with Word document comments listed on them. I haven't actually had a chance to go read through it, but that was very interesting, and I got one of those. Both Josh Burcham and Alex Milne were selling art books of their art, and I got each of them, and I got both of their signatures, both in the art book and both in my little handbook that I got. Since I'm talking signatures, I might also just say I also got
Andrew Griffith.
Thank you. I stalled on that name so hard in the review in the video for Friday, talking about everything. I also got Sarah Petra Durochers and Headmaster Dons as well. Those were all free though, without purchase of anything else. But in terms of toys, I got a large variety of stuff. I did end up getting a G1 figure. Most of my purchases ended up being Beast Wars related or Cybertron related. I'm kind of surprised to myself I didn't get a whole lot of animated. I only got one animated figure, that being Ratchet. A lot of Beast Wars. I did get Prime figure that was from Don Ferguson, and that review is already up on my channel. That was Beast Hunters Prime Deluxe Class Ripclaw. So go check that out after this video if you haven't.
Yep. Yes. Do it. Plugging it up.
Yeah. Plugs. The most surprisingly cheap thing I got was mint and sealed box Roulette and Shadow Striker, who were BotCon 2003 exclusives.
Yes.
I didn't actually buy it. Alyssa actually was kind enough to get it for me.
At one point at the most recent convention we both went to, which was JCon this year, right? No. That was 2 years. That was 2 years ago. Jesus. When we went to that convention, I offered for SoundJack's birthday to buy him anything from the convention as his birthday gift, and I would pay for it. But he never took me up on that offer, so then I basically offered him, it basically was a rain check, and then he took up the rain check, and I bought as a very, 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 very belated birthday gift.
Yes. But I got that I'm surprised about. I'm not sure, like, I would have been content with paying $45 for both of them out of the box loose. The only damage I see in the box is like some of the plastic is a little torn and there's a couple of holes in the plastic wrapping the box, but the box seems to be fine. So I don't know. Maybe, well, granted, also that seller was trying to sell a Chaos of Velocitron box set, a total $100 box set. Well, one of the figures was missing, but he was going to sell the rest of the box for $30. So I guess the seller was selling things pretty cheap.
Yeah.
So that worked out in my favor. Get a couple more girls on my shelves, because that's a rare thing in Transformers.
Yeah, yes. I have learned that girl figures in Transformers is like needles in haystacks, and even then.
Yeah. But my holy grail purchase was finding Transformers Cybertron Primus.
You were really excited about that.
And holy crap, is he gorgeous.
He looks pretty impressive.
He is massive. He transforms into Cybertron. And holy crap, he, despite being like the peaceful god type of person, he is decked out in more guns than you can shake a stick at.
Yes, definitely.
It is a wonderful figure, and I am so pleased I got him. And I will definitely be having a review of him up this Friday, Friday, October the 7th. 6th. Yeah.
We a lot of videos are going up Friday, guys. So check in then, and you'll see a lot.
Just the Primus and the convention hall review, but those are what's going up Friday, and that's what I got. And again, I'll talk more about that, the specifics of what I got in the haul video, but. Now I think we should discuss what our specific favorite parts of the convention were. Alyssa, you start. What was your favorite part or parts of this convention?
So, as I said before, I think the two favorite parts panel-wise for me and also convention-wise was the costume contest, just because I think the cosplays for Transformers are so involved and so detailed and require a lot of effort to really pull off. I found all of the costumes really engaging. And then my other favorite was seeing the Transformers movie for the first time, just because it was it's a unique experience. Like, seeing it with people who really like the movie and are really big fans is different from seeing it on my own. So those are my two big highlights. Everything else was was interesting and I liked it, but I wasn't as engaged with it as those two events.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. My question to James Roberts is my all-time favorite part of this convention, just with the response and how I just felt good making sure I asked a really good question. I gotta find a place to put that quote somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
On in relation to my channel, ooh, this man wants canon, James Roberts.
Yeah.
But also the voice acting 101 panel, because I am an actor and I do want to act, and while that's not necessarily that was not necessarily helpful for me as a stage actor, as they also admitted stage acting and voice acting are different, certainly quite different, and what you need to do. That helped me with voice acting, because I do have some interest in voice acting.
Yes.
And if I can get into that, I would love to get into that and maybe voice some Transformers one of these days.
Cool.
It would. Yeah, those were my favorite things. I also did quite enjoy seeing the Transformers movie with that large crowd and audience.
Yeah, it's definitely a Rocky Horror-esque kind of feeling, but without the shadow cast and all the noise. I feel like with Rocky Horror,
But
I guess I wouldn't recommend people see that movie for the first time with a shadow cast. Like, I would recommend them seeing it on their own for the first time, just because that's a movie that needs to be experienced first alone and then with a crowd. But with Transformers the movie, I can see me watching it with a crowd was a fine first time, and I don't think it's the kind of movie where I really needed to like know all the intricate details of everything, just because it's a large noise fest with plot that's all over the place and characters that don't always make sense, or plot holes that are like, what? So
yeah, but there was no part of the convention that I didn't like. And that's the big thing for me. There wasn't anything like that I did or anything that I did not like about it. Alyssa, did you have anything you disliked about the convention itself?
the only thing that I would say was a bit of a problem was that, as I alluded to when we were talking about the dealer's room, it was really compact and there wasn't a lot of aisle space for movement. And as someone who's been to a lot of conventions, that's a big thing that I'm always really not angry about, but I always get really frustrated when conventions don't have a lot of space for traffic. Granted, I've been to New York Comic Con, and even with the big dealer's room that they have with all of the floor space, it still can get really crowded, especially if people are like crowding around vendors and stuff. But what's good about Comic Con is they have large cross section lanes for people to sort of get to where they want to go, and if there's it's better to sort of know where you're headed in some ways, and if you do that, then it's not as much of a hassle. And I guess I'm not gonna, and I don't think the fact that they didn't have a lot of general nerd stuff is really a detriment, because again, this convention is marketed and made for Transformers fans, so the fact that they didn't have anything specifically for me or something that I'd be interested in isn't really a knock on them. Like, that's not what the convention is for. I don't really know. I think the way that the dealer's room is set up could have been a little better, but that's like my only real complaint that I had. And I think my apathy, is apathy too strong a word? It might be too strong a word. My general the fact that I wasn't like as excited as SoundJack was for a lot of things we saw wasn't necessarily the convention's fault, I guess is my point. It was me not being a fan that was the reason why I wasn't like super duper duper uber into everything.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about before we end this podcast is at the end of the last video, we talked a little bit about possible apprehension. Well, I don't think it was at the end, but we did talk about some apprehensions we had for this convention. So why don't you talk about what you were apprehensive of and if it came out to be or not?
So if I recall from our last video, which I probably should have watched before we started this, so I remember exactly what I said.
Yeah, we should have done that, but I think I remember what we said.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. I think one of my biggest apprehensions was, again, me not being a Transformers fan, and trying to find something that was engaging and interesting despite that. That was one of my apprehensions. I think it was hit and miss. I think in some ways I did find myself not as engaged as I could have been or was in comparison to other people around me, mostly just because a lot of the panels and a lot of the toys and stuff I couldn't really get that into. I mean, I think the toys was probably the most general engaging thing that I saw there, because I mean, Transformer toys are so interesting because you have to they're like little mini puzzles, you have to try and figure out how they all fit together and how it all comes into robot mode or into vehicle mode and stuff like that, and that to me was engaging. But I think in some ways the convention did not deliver on a general basis because it was very tailored to that one specific interest of Transformers and toy collection and everything with that fandom. And so if you're someone who isn't in that fandom, it's hard to engage. And I can see someone who isn't amenable to that sort of thing being really turned off by it. On the other hand, though, I think I was surprised with how much I found engaging. Like I said before, I ended up playing with a lot of the Transformers that were there and just kind of fiddling around with them, seeing how they worked. And actually, I think I'm gonna take this quick moment to tell a quick story.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So at one point, Michael bought a Vector Prime.
Yes.
Is that the figure? Vector Prime, Transformers Cybertron Vector Prime figure. And while he was talking with the vendor, I was playing around with it. And so I saw a little lever that was on the, ship nose cone, I guess. And I was like, oh, I wonder what this does. And I flicked it, and it fires the missile. And I basically shot the missile across the convention hall.
Well, you didn't shoot it across the convention hall. You thought you shot it across the convention hall, but it ended up landing in a box on the dude's table.
Yeah, so that was frightening. I realized how stupid my mistake was as soon as it happened, and I was like, oh my god, I did the dummy thing, the what does this do? And then it ended up. Thankfully, we found the missile, which I'm very happy about. That I didn't cost Michael a complete figure.
Yeah.
But, no pro tip: if you don't know what something does, don't touch it. This has been a PSA from Alyssa. Don't do what I did.
Yeah.
That will end up being pretty bad. But yeah, that kind of stuff. I was surprised with how much I was able to engage with it, despite my, lack of knowledge or lack of fandom or fanness coming in. And so I think that's the second part. The second part is that I expressed my apprehensions for a gender split in how many people were there. I was worried that I wouldn't see that many women there because Transformers is marketed mostly to men. And while that's not a problem in of itself, I think, being a woman there, I was afraid that people would talk down to me or treat me like, oh, you're not a real fan. You don't deserve to be here. This is a man space. But actually, I found that everyone was pretty acceptable. I think everyone assumed, for the most part, that I knew what I was talking about and I knew what Transformers was, even though I didn't. And that was really great. I didn't have anyone who came up to me or any vendors who assumed that, I was, didn't know what I was talking about or wasn't supposed to be there or anything like that. And there was also a lot of women there that I was surprised. I think that I would probably say the gender ratio was somewhere between 70-30 at the lowest, 60-40 at the highest, I think is a fair estimate. It was skewed towards men, I think still, but it wasn't to the point where I felt like I was the only woman there. There were still lots of women there, which I was very happy about. And I think that made me feel pretty comfortable. Also, there were a lot of kids there, which I didn't consider at all, which makes sense, though. In retrospect, that makes sense since Transformers is a toy franchise.
Yeah, and it's old enough that it's probably a lot of the parents that were there were also Transformers fans. There were probably some that were not, and then their kids just really wanted to go and they went with them. But
yeah, there's definitely kids there, more so than I thought there would be, which again, in retrospect, makes sense. I think it's stupid that I didn't even consider the fact that there would be kids there. But yeah, basically that apprehension wasn't that much of a problem, and I'm very happy that was the case. And I'm happy, and I hope that other women who were there felt the same way that I did about the men there and if they were treating them well and all that good stuff.
Yeah. In terms of apprehensions for me, I remember my main thing was trying to meet new people and make friends within the Transformers fandom while at the convention. Just because I'm an awkward duck like I am. Unfortunately for me, that did not really happen. Though that was more so because I was absorbed into the convention itself and didn't have a lot of breathing time to relax, sit down and try to have conversations with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that had there not been as many panels you were interested in, you probably would have found more time to like talk with people, especially people who are like selling personal collections and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I probably would have talked to Headmaster Don before if we weren't on our way to the costume panel. And I remember I stopped by, like, we were at the lower level of the lobby and some people were hanging out. And I stopped by one group and I just wanted to check if the one toy they had was in fact a Galaxy Meteor, which is a third-party product that I'm actually interested in because it's based on a Cybertron toy design. And then afterwards I was like, darn it, I could have struck up a conversation with them.
Yeah. And I think that's something we can work on. And work on trying to talk with people. And, you know, I'm amongst the two of us, I'm probably the more extroverted of the two of us and more amenable to starting conversations. So, yeah, I've done that before where if I think there were a couple times in the convention where SoundJack was like afraid to talk to someone or wasn't that eager, and I was like, all right, I'll do it. I'll just talk. I'll just strike up a conversation. And
you were telling me when I was trying to get Sarah's signature for the first time, like I was just kind of like standing there awkwardly, kind of like perusing the things before I actually got the nerve to like ask her, hey, can you just sign this in while I don't get anything from your table?
Yeah.
And then it turned out it was not Sarah that I signed the signature for.
That was pretty funny, but like, hey, other people made that mistake too, so it wasn't like that bad in retrospect.
I even double checked online to make sure that it was her, and it looked enough like her that I thought it was her, especially because she had white hair in the photos online. But no, she had blue hair when she actually made her appearance. She was unfortunately not feeling well, so that's why like she wasn't there when I like tried to first get her signature. Well, actually, right before we started this, I was talking to some people on the forums, and apparently some people were like interested in like keeping like the convention vibe alive a little bit, and like a local group meetup is trying to possibly happen in a couple of weeks. Oh, cool. And I'm talking about going to that, and maybe I'll meet some friends there.
Yeah, that would be really great. By the way, if any of you watching, or I guess listening is the better term because there's really not much to watch. If you guys were at the convention, I don't know if you saw us there, although I guess at this point you don't know what I look like because I don't think I've ever made a proper face appearance yet. But if you saw there, let us know.
If you saw a tall guy in a gray sweat jacket wearing blue jeans with about average height girl with red hair, red curly hair, you probably saw us, and say that you saw us, or at least say that you were in fact at the convention if you were there.
Yeah, we definitely would love to hear what you guys thought about the convention, what your highs were, what your lows were. Stuff that you bought, if you wanted to share that. Anything is good. We always like to converse with people.
Yeah, leave comments in the below if you have anything you want to say about your experience at the convention.
Yes, definitely.
But I think that's all we have to say for now.
Yeah, I think so. I think I said everything that I wanted to say. I don't really think there's anything else pertinent to discuss, and I think how are we on time?
We're about an hour and 10 almost.
All right, yes, we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, we're going to wrap this up, but before we do, I mentioned earlier, this is not the last video we will have on TFCon. This coming Friday, October the 6th, October the 6th, yes. Friday, I will have a video discussing all of my purchases and having video of all of my purchases and signatures and stuff like that. And then this following Sunday, the 8th, there will also hopefully this could be subject to change, but this is my current plan. On Sunday, the 8th of October, there will be our vlog of the convention and our event of what we did at the convention. Yes. So keep an eye out for those. And if you want to know what our thoughts were before the convention and haven't checked it out, please check out our TFCon DC 2017 pre-show talk that has been up for over a week by the time this video gets out.
Yep.
You were going to say?
Oh, yeah. I just that one also talks more about our personal experiences with conventions prior to TFCon. So if you're more interested in a general convention discussion, that one also is there for you.
Yes. But for now, that is it. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at SoundJack426. Also, please consider donating on my Patreon page to help support the channel. All of the links will be in the description below. Thanks for tuning in. This is SoundJack and Alyssa signing off.